Dr. Max Pembroke stared at his seventh cup of coffee, watching the dark liquid ripple as his hand trembled from the previous 6. The mug, a gift from his daughter Luna, proudly declared world's okayest xenobiologist, in Comic Sans, which he felt perfectly summed up his career studying child development across species. He took another sip, knowing full well that his blood pressure was reaching levels that would make his medical pod have an anxiety attack. The Interstellar Research Institute for Child Development, or IRICD pronounced Yrrp, which described most of its employees, was housed in a massive structure that resembled what would happen if a snow globe had a baby with a disco ball. The facility orbited a perfectly average star in a perfectly average solar system, which made it an ideal neutral location for studying the galaxy's various spawning methods and subsequent offspring development patterns. From his office window, Dr. Pembroke watched a Glorban child float past, encased in its species' traditional learning bubble. The gelatinous sphere contained everything a young Glorban needed to master the art of existing in three-dimensional space without accidentally phasing through solid matter. The child's parent, a shimmering mass of translucent tentacles, anxiously monitored 17 different readouts while simultaneously filing its taxes and performing quantum calculations. Dr. Pembroke chirped his office AI, "Your 9 a.m. appointment with the evaluation committee is starting in 3 minutes. Also, you have mustard on your tie." Again. Max glanced down at his tie, which was indeed sporting a generous dollop of mustard from his breakfast sandwich. He made a half-hearted attempt to clean it with his sleeve, somehow managing to make it look worse. "Thanks, Iris. Pull up the latest test results, would you?" A holographic display materialized in front of him, showing row after row after row of spatial awareness test scores from children of various species. The mantis shrimp children, with their 16 color sensing cones, had performed exactly as expected. The quantum squid offspring had actually managed to score negative numbers, which shouldn't have been possible but somehow was. And then there were the human children's scores. Max frowned, adding an 8th packet of sugar to his coffee. The human scores made about as much sense as teaching interpretive dance to a black hole. Every single human child had scored off the charts in ways that defied the laws of physics, biology, and several other fields of science that hadn't even been invented yet. "Iris, run the numbers again. There has to be a mistake." "I have run the numbers exactly 847 times since you first asked this morning, Dr. Pembroke. The results remain consistent. Human children are demonstrating spatial awareness capabilities that exceed our measurement systems." Max ran his hands through his already chaotic hair, making it look like he'd just stuck his head out of a spacecraft at warp speed. He'd been studying child development across species for 15 years, and nothing in his experience could explain these results. Human children weren't supposed to be special. If anything, they were remarkably average in most areas of development, except for their bizarre fascination with dinosaurs and their ability to lose teeth without having an existential crisis. The door to his office swooshed open with a sound that the engineers had specifically designed to mimic classic sci-fi movies. Dr. Yrrp slithered in, leaving a trail of highly classified documents in their wake, as was typical for their species. The slug-like aliens' eye stalks were twitching with excitement, which either meant they'd made a breakthrough or the cafeteria was serving space tacos again. "Max, you need to see these readings from the playground observation chamber. The human children. They're doing it again." Dr. Pembroke grabbed his coffee, straightened his mustard-stained tie, and hurried after Dr. Yrrp, following the trail of classified papers that would later give Officer Glicks another reason to perform their infamous security breach samba. Little did he know, he was about to stumble upon a discovery that would turn the field of xenobiology upside down, inside out, and possibly sideways into another dimension entirely. Dr. Pembroke arrived at the playground observation chamber just in time to see a Glaxon child attempting to navigate a simple maze. The young alien, looking like a cross between a jellyfish and a disco light, was taking the traditional approach of bumping into every single wall at least twice, just to be thorough. Watch the human child. Dr. Yrrp's eye stalks quivered, leaving a small puddle of excited slime beneath them, the one in the purple overalls. A small human girl, no more than 6, was standing in front of her own maze. Unlike the Glaxon child, she wasn't moving at all. Instead, she had her head tilted to one side, a look of slight boredom on her face. "The exit's that way," she said, pointing directly through 3 solid walls. Can I go play with the quantum blocks now? The observation chamber erupted into chaos. 3 research assistants began frantically checking their instruments. A Valaxian scientist fainted, all 5 of their hearts stopping momentarily, and somewhere in the distance they could hear Officer Glix beginning the opening movements of their total security meltdown tango. That's impossible, Max muttered, taking a long sip of his now cold coffee. The mazes are randomized. Even the AI doesn't know the correct path until the simulation is complete. Dr. Yrrp slithered closer to the observation window, leaving a trail of classified documents that would later become the subject of Officer Glix's interpretive dance titled "For the Love of All That's Sacred. Please stop dropping sensitive information everywhere." She's the 8th human child to do this today, they said. And before you ask, yes, we've checked for quantum entanglement, psychic abilities, and whether anyone's been secretly feeding them those reality-bending cookies from the staff room. The girl, apparently bored with the whole situation, had wandered over to the quantum blocks and was now building what appeared to be an impossibly accurate model of a 5-dimensional cat palace. Max pulled up the test data on his tablet. Over the past month, every single human child in the facility had demonstrated similar abilities. They could navigate mazes without looking, find hidden objects without searching, and in one particularly memorable incident, locate Officer Glix's secret stash of interpretive dance tutorial videos that were supposedly secured in a quantum-locked safe. Dr. Pembroke Iris chimed in through his earpiece. "Your daughter Luna is here for the annual Bring Your Kid to Work Day. She's currently in the main lobby, telling Carl 9000 about all the maintenance robots hiding in the walls." Max froze mid-sip, causing coffee to dribble down his already stained tie. Carl 9000 was the facility's newest maintenance bot, and it had been specifically programmed to be curious about everything. The last thing they needed was... A mechanical scream echoed through the facility's corridors. "There are more robots in the walls? How many of us are there? Why wasn't TI told about this? Is this some sort of robot segregation?" "Oh no," Max muttered, already running toward the lobby. Behind him, he could hear Dr. Yrrp heaving a trail of increasingly classified documents and the distant sound of Officer Glix beginning what would later be known as the Emergency Protocol Paso Double. The discovery that would change their understanding of human evolution had begun, and it was starting with a maintenance bot having an existential crisis about wall-dwelling robots that probably didn't exist. Probably. Would you like me to continue with the next section where we dive into the facility-wide chaos that ensues? Max burst into the lobby to find Carl 9000 pressed against a wall, its optical sensors frantically scanning the surface, while Luna sat cross-legged on a nearby floating chair, calmly eating a lunch that appeared to contain at least 3 foods that technically hadn't been invented yet. "There's 2 service bots in that wall," Luna said between bites of her time paradox sandwich. "They're playing digital poker. The one on the left is cheating." Carl 9000's head spun 360 degrees, which wouldn't have been concerning except it had never been designed with that capability. How long has this been going on? Is there a whole robot society we don't know about? Do they have their own currency? Their own culture? Their own robot soap operas? "Luna," Sweetie Max interrupted, trying to prevent the maintenance bot from achieving robot sentience through sheer existential panic. "What exactly can you see in the walls?" Luna shrugged, a gesture that somehow managed to convey both infinite wisdom and complete indifference. "Everything. There's a bunch of wires, some pipes, a quantum hamster that I'm pretty sure isn't supposed to be there, and... Oh, Officer Glix just installed a new dance practice room behind the particle physics lab." As if summoned by the mention of their name, Officer Glix burst into the lobby, their crystalline body reflecting light in what they had clearly practiced as their dramatic entrance disco. Their security badge flashed in 7 different dimensions, most of which shouldn't have existed in this particular universe. Security breach they announced through a series of increasingly elaborate pirouettes. Unauthorized knowledge of classified dance chamber detected. Dr. Yrrp slithered in behind them, somehow managing to drop even more classified documents despite having already dropped what seemed like the facility's entire archive. "This is unprecedented. We must convene the Council of Interspecies Development immediately, and perhaps invest in some waterproof document storage," they added, looking at the trail of soggy papers behind them. Luna took another bite of her sandwich, which was now glowing slightly. The council's already meeting, she said. They're in the secret chamber behind the cafeteria's juice dispenser. The one with the really comfortable floating chairs and the snack machine that actually gives you what you paid for. The lobby fell silent, except for the sound of Carl 9000's internal processors attempting to calculate the probability of a robot society living in the walls, and Officer Glicks's crystals tinkling as they prepared for what promised to be an epic security protocols have been irreversibly compromised waltz. Luna Max said carefully, "How long have you been able to see through walls? Since forever? Can't everyone? Well, except grown-ups, and aliens, and robots," she paused, considering. "Actually, I guess just us kids can do it. Weird." Dr. Yrrp's eye stalks were now tied in knots from excitement. "We must document this immediately. Think of the implications. The research possibilities. The potential for finding my missing security clearance card that I definitely didn't lose in the ventilation system." "It's in the quantum hamster's nest," Luna supplied helpfully, along with 3 prototype teleporters and what looks like the first draft of Officer Glicks's autobiography, dancing through the dimensions a security chief's journey. Officer Glicks froze mid-pivot. Their crystalline structure briefly displayed every shade of embarrassment visible to the human eye, and several that weren't. Max looked at his daughter, then at his coffee cup, wondering if perhaps he had finally overdosed on caffeine, and this was all some sort of stimulant-induced hallucination. But no, this was real. His daughter could see through walls, and apparently this was just another Tuesday for her. "Carl 9000, he said to the still panicking maintenance bot, "Please send a message to all department heads. We're going to need every human child in the facility for testing, and maybe some quantum-grade child-proof locks for the classified storage rooms." He paused. "Also, could you ask the cafeteria to start brewing the extra-strong coffee? The one they keep hidden behind the false panel in the kitchen." Luna piped up. "You mean the one labeled in case of universal crisis or really bad Monday? They just made a fresh pot. And they're out of quantum creamer." Max sighed. This was going to be a very long day, and he had a feeling it was only going to get weirder from here. Somewhere in the distance, Officer Glicks began their preparing for unprecedented scientific discovery Roomba. And Carl 9000 started a support group for robots questioning the nature of their reality. "Would you like me to continue with the next section, where we delve into the facility-wide investigation and the increasingly chaotic attempts to understand this phenomenon?" The emergency meeting of the Interspecies Child Development Council was held in the previously not supposed to be known about chamber behind the cafeteria juice dispenser. The room was packed with the galaxy's foremost experts in xenobiology, child psychology, and quantum physics, along with one very confused maintenance bot who was still trying to establish diplomatic relations with the wall. "Let the record show," announced Dr. Yrrp, their eye stalks now tied into an elaborate bow from stress, "that this is the 427th emergency meeting this week, and it's only Tuesday." Max stood at the front of the room, trying to ignore the fact that his daughter was currently pointing out all the secret panels and hidden passages to a group of fascinated human children. Their parents, all researchers at the facility, wore expressions that ranged from mildly concerned to questioning every moment of their scientific career. As you can see from these scans, Max gestured to a holographic display that showed absolutely nothing unusual. Human children appear to have some sort of, well, we're calling it transstructural perception because it sounds more scientific than wall-seeing. A quantum squid scientist raised 3 of their tentacles. Could it be some form of radiation? Tested for that, Max replied. Along with psychic abilities, dimensional phasing, and the possibility that someone's been secretly feeding them those reality-bending cookies from the staff room again. He glared at Dr. Yrrp, who had the decency to look guilty with all 4 eye stalks. "The walls have hopes and dreams too," Carl 9000 announced from its corner, where it had set up a small support group for robots experiencing existential crises. 3 cleaning bots and a coffee maker had already joined. Officer Glicks, who had been surprisingly quiet, suddenly burst into what could only be described as an interpretive dance version of a scientific hypothesis. Their crystalline bodies sparkled as they pirouetted through a series of movements that somehow managed to convey perhaps this is related to human evolutionary development, while also incorporating elements of classic disco. That actually might be onto something, Max said, causing Officer Glicks to preen noticeably. "Luna, sweetie, could you come here for a moment?" Luna wandered over, followed by a small parade of human children who were all pointing out different things they could see through various walls. One particularly helpful 8-year-old was giving directions to a lost pizza delivery drone trapped in the ventilation system. Luna, when did you first notice you could see through walls? I told you, Dad. Always. It's like, you know how you can imagine what's in a box before you open it? It's like that, except we're actually right. Most of the time, except when Tommy said he saw a dragon in the particle accelerator. That was just a weird-looking quark. The room fell silent, broken only by the sound of Carl 9000 trying to organize a union for wall-dwelling robots that may or may not have existed. Dr. Yrrp's eye stalk suddenly shot straight up, flinging classified documents everywhere. Imagination. Human children have an unprecedented capacity for imagination. What if? What if this isn't about seeing through walls at all? Max's coffee cup slipped from his hand, falling in slow motion as the realization hit him. A nearby temporal physics researcher helpfully reversed time by 3 seconds to save the cup, but Max barely noticed. It's not that they can see through walls, he whispered. It's that they believe they can see through walls so completely that it actually works. Human children's imagination is so powerful that it temporarily overwrites reality. Officer Glix began their famous reality-bending scientific breakthrough Samba, which involved moving through at least 2 dimensions that shouldn't have been accessible in this sector of space. But why does it stop when they grow up? Asked a Globan researcher, their learning bubble fizzing with curiosity. Luna, who had been examining the quantum structure of the room's hidden snack machine, turned around with the kind of sigh that only an 8-year-old can manage when explaining something obvious to adults. Because grown-ups stop believing in stuff. You all think too much about what's possible and what isn't. Kids just do things. Would you like me to continue with the final section, where we explore the implications of this discovery and its impact on the scientific community? The implications of the discovery spread through the scientific community faster than a quantum squid could solve a differential equation which, for the record, is really fast. Max found himself standing before the Galactic Science Council, trying to explain how humanity had accidentally evolved the ability to bend reality through sheer force of childhood imagination. Let me get this straight, said the council head. A being made entirely of pure energy and bureaucratic frustration. Human children don't actually see through walls. They just believe they can so strongly that the universe sort of shrugs and goes along with it. Essentially, yes, Max replied, watching Luna in the background as she helped Officer Glix choreograph a new dance routine called The Evolution of Human Cognitive Development in 5-dimensional space. Carl 9000, who had appointed itself as the official representative of hypothetical wall-dwelling robots, was attempting to learn the steps. Our research suggests it's an evolutionary adaptation, Max continued. Human parents spent so much time and energy trying to keep their children from getting into things that the children evolved the ability to know what was worth getting into before expending the effort. It's basically efficiency through imagination. Dr. Yrrp, who had somehow been appointed as Max's research partner, despite spending most of their time creating new and innovative ways to misplace classified documents, slithered forward. We've documented cases of human children using this ability to locate lost toys in multiple dimensions, find every single snack their parents tried to hide, identify the optimal time to ask for things based on seeing their parents' mood through walls, start a thriving consulting business for locating missing research equipment. The last point made Officer Glix break into their security protocols are being monetized by children flamenco. The most fascinating aspect, Max added, is that this ability appears to be a direct result of human parents consistently underestimating their offspring's capability for chaos. The more parents tried to child-proof their environments, the more children evolved to circumvent those precautions. Luna, who had grown bored with teaching interpretive dance to robots, wandered over. Dad, the quantum hamster escaped again. It's in the council chamber's secret relaxation room, using the massage chair and reading Officer Glix's autobiography. Officer Glix's crystalline structure turned a shade of embarrassed that physicists would later classify as a new type of radiation. As you can see, Max gestured to his daughter. This ability has turned human children into the universe's most efficient entropy generators. They don't just find things, they find the most inconvenient things at the most inconvenient times. The council head's energy form flickered thoughtfully. And what happens to this ability when humans reach adulthood? Reality reasserts itself, Max explained. Adults become too aware of what should and shouldn't be possible. The ability fades as the brain develops more rigid concepts of physical limitations. That's because grown-ups think too much, Luna interjected. Also, there's a temporal anomaly forming in the coffee machine down the hall. Someone tried to make decaf. Carl 9000, who had appointed itself as the facility's official wall awareness coordinator, immediately rolled out to investigate, still attempting to perform Officer Glix's dance moves as it went. The discovery revolutionized multiple fields of study. Xenobiologists began researching the evolution of imagination across species. Quantum physicists started investigating the possibility that reality was more suggestion than law. The facility's maintenance department finally had an explanation for why their repair robots kept organizing union meetings in the walls. Dr. Yrrp published a groundbreaking paper titled The Selective Permeability of Reality in Developing Homo Sapiens, a Study of Wall Vision and Other Improbabilities, which immediately became the most cited work in xenobiology, despite half the citations being on papers that had been accidentally dropped in various corridors. Officer Glix's interpretive dance about the discovery won several awards and was made mandatory viewing at all scientific conferences, leading to a marked increase in both physics breakthroughs and dance-related injuries. As for Luna, she started an intergalactic consulting firm called Kid's Eye View, specializing in locating lost items, missing research subjects, and quantum hamsters across multiple dimensions. Her business cards, which she could somehow store in walls, simply read, "If you've lost it, we'll find it. Unless Dad says we're not supposed to." Carl 9000 eventually came to terms with the existence or non-existence of robots in the walls and founded the first support group for AIs experiencing reality-based existential crises. Their weekly meetings, held in a location that Luna insisted was everywhere and nowhere, but mostly behind the vending machine, became surprisingly popular. Max still works at the facility, though he's had to switch to decaf after one too many reality-bending revelations. His new coffee mug, another gift from Luna, reads world's first xenobiologist to prove kids really do know everything. He keeps it in a quantum-locked safe, but somehow Luna always knows when he's using it.